the continuation of, I think it was more than 80% of all of Gaza is now under either like full military occupation, or forced displacement orders. And like you said, the plan in Gaza for the Israelis, and the U.S. Is to force people possibly to the south. What do we know about what? Uh, I mean, there are these images coming out over the last week of not just the like kind of wide scale bulldozing of entire city blocks in already decimated Rafah, but now they're bringing in machines that pulverize the rubble. So really, this like kind of second stage of real erasure of entire cities, of people's entire lives. What I don't know. What can we say about these ethnic cleansing plans at the moment?
Well, that pulverizing is to make, because the destruction is so total in
Yeah,
Rafah, they can't set up these aid distribution sites without cleaning, smashing
yeah,
more to have a flattened area that people can access, because the roads are all out of,
right.
they're all destroyed. The houses, every building is destroyed. There's rubble all over. And so if this Trump plan is to be realized, they have to do like essentially bulldozing of the already pulverized
Yeah,
land in order to create these corridors that will allow people to set up in Rafah, which is what their
right.
intention. The plan is to have people set up near the aid, pick up the aid. Only a certain group of people will be allowed to pick up the aid. This is a dystopian
Completely.
fantasy that these Israeli planners have. The idea is then that they would set up camps in Rafah, and people who want to leave
Concentration
would be,
camps.
yeah, more
Yeah,
concentrated
more. Yeah,
concentration camps than
right,
Gaza, and
right.
that people will be then, uh, given the option of voluntary, like the most misnomer for the ethnic cleansing. And so we're seeing those plans by the Israelis. They're doing it through two private companies, an American mercenary company that's involved with Israeli businessmen who are going to be profiting off of this, but it's not set up yet.
No,
And so Netanyahu, like you reported in your news report, Netanyahu's getting pressure to get aid in, and he wanted the aid that got in to be under this logistical
right.
mechanism, but it's not in place yet. And so that's part of the reason why the aid shipments are being held at the border, because Israel doesn't want these
Right.
shipments to go to the internationally recognized um, aid organizations who are
Distributors
able
like
to
the
distribute.
United Nations and
Yeah,
yeah,
the
and
people
the
who've been doing it
WHO.
for
Yeah,
the entire
yeah,
time,
yeah,
and the local Palestinians who know how to
yeah.
hand out these and have distribution sites. There's more than 400 distribution sites in Gaza, even now, where, like you say, 80% is off no-go zone. There's still
Yeah.
400 aid distribution sites, and Israel wants to turn that into 4.
Wow.
So it is a really dark point in
Yeah.
this really dark period, and it's not totally clear how this is going to go going forward, because people can't uh, they can't go on a 40-kilometer march from the north with having not eaten anything. Children's teeth are falling out, hairs falling out of their heads, of children. You're not having children walking 35 kilometers to Rafah in order to get these food handouts. So this is just a really
Yeah.
devastating moment, and the
Yeah.
fact that the Americans are letting this happen when Netanyahu, like you reported, is very clear in saying he's getting pressure
Yeah.
from the Americans to get aid in, because they don't
Not
want.
even it's not even to get aid in. It's to stop the flow of footage
Yeah, they don't want to see
of
the footage.
emaciated children. They don't want to see the footage anymore. So it's not even about the actual distribution of aid. It's just they don't. it's really not good optics.
Yeah. I
And
mean, it's
and
dark
yeah,
because this is day 80. It's more than day 80 of this siege.
yeah,
And Israel has tried this siege multiple times throughout the war. Remember, the war began with it when Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, said, I'm not going to repeat what he said, but uh, insulted Palestinians and said that there would be no food, no water,
yeah,
no nothing getting into Gaza. And the international community pushed back on that, such as they are,
yeah,
and Israel stopped it. And then there was multiple times throughout when there was the general's plan that was talked about. They limited aid to the north, but again, presumably it's the Americans are stepping in and saying, um, you're going to put us all in the Hague for this kind of behavior. But
and that can be
nothing
the
changes.
only right. Nothing changes, and Palestinians can't eat condemnations and statements.
No.
And and that's why we're seeing this very curiously timed wave of condemnations from Europeans, mostly European
Right.
leaders.
Yeah.
Asa, what can you say about the utility of these kinds of condemnations? Why what significant, significance is the timing right now? Is it because, Starmer and Lammy, for example, in the UK, don't want to end up in The Hague and they see the writing on the wall? What's
Yeah, I
behind
mean,
this?
absolutely. I mean, I think that's it in a nutshell, really. I mean, so part of this pressure exactly that we're talking about, is coming from the European countries, and they want to appear because Israel is so unpopular everywhere now, really. Um, not just in Ireland, as this has been a very Irish episode of
Yeah.
the live stream, I'm happy to say. But uh, uh, the reality is the Palestinian cause is not as strongly supported in other countries in Europe. Um, but nonetheless, Israel is still unpopular everywhere. Really, I
Yeah.
mean this is the reality, and so even the national governments in Europe are coming under pressure from their populations to at least appear or to be doing something, do something about it, right? And so what we've seen this week is more of that. And we've got this, it was reported this week in Britain, for example, that the foreign minister, as you said, David Lammy, stood up in Parliament and he condemned Israel's refusal to allow thousands of aid trucks access to starving Palestinians. This is what this Guardian article reports, and said Israel's treatment of Palestinians was, quote, an affront to the values of the British people. And in well, it may be true, but it's not an affront to the values of the British government of the current day or really any other day. And he continued, quote, is incompatible with the principles that underpin the UK Israel bilateral relationship. I think that's certainly not true. But he did say that he was suspending these. He put some very, very sort of tokenistic measures in place, essentially, um, suspending these trade
Yeah.
talks. And the Guardian article continued. At the same time, EU foreign ministers meeting in Brussels decided to review the bloc's trade agreement with Israel after a request from the Dutch foreign minister. 17 out of 27 states backed the move. The EU is Israel's biggest trading partner. And then further down in the article, it says that David Lammy, again the foreign minister of Britain, under the prime minister that you mentioned, Keir Starmer, David Lammy also imposed sanctions on a further 3 Israeli settlers and 4 entities on the West Bank, including the veteran settler extremist Daniela Weiss, the head of the Nakhala movement, who featured in Louis Theroux's recent documentary, The Settlers. I mean, I think that just says so much.
Yeah.
I mean, it's actually a good, in my view, it's a fairly good documentary. Louis Theroux's documentary, The Settlers, and he's talking to these settler leaders in the West Bank. I mean, I think for a lot of our viewers, it won't be
It's nothing new.
exactly. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah.
and my impression of watching it was very much like, well, in 20 years of visiting Palestine and covering this issue in one way or another, it's depressing how little has changed. Nonetheless, it was a documentary which was on mainstream TV on the BBC in Britain, and it probably would have had informed some people of the sheer fanaticism of settler leaders like Daniela Rice just openly saying, I don't, they need to go, and this is all Jewish land, and so on and so forth. The kind of fanaticism we know about, but like sanctioning her, I mean, great, sanction her, but that's not the issue. This is a real tokenistic measure, right?
It's
Because
not
it's
going to
not,
stop the genocide.
exactly
Yeah,
she's more of a symptom. Like she's talking even in that
yeah.
documentary, she's talking about how she has influence on the Israeli government, right? And that she has a hotline to Netanyahu's advisors. So sanction Netanyahu. Really, bring Netanyahu to, don't expel the Israeli ambassador, arrest the Israeli ambassador. That's the kind of thing that we really need. And so this does seem to me that it seems to be more of David Lammy and Keir Starmer, perhaps with thinking, and this relates to what Frank was saying about the metaphor of, cutting off the gangrenous limb.
That's right.
Is Israel starting to, imperialists in the West starting to see Israel as more of a liability, and are they beginning to have one eye on, well, maybe we could be prosecuted for this, for war crimes, for our involvement in this, and are they trying to distance themselves now? And Tamara, if you could put on that thank you very much. This
There we
just
go.
really shows exactly what I'm talking about here. This is from the National, which is the pro-independence newspaper in Scotland, which actually does some good journalism, unlike the British press. And they've done some good reporting on this issue, and they showed, hours after David Lammy came into Parliament and is putting these token measures in place, the actual real, not just complicity, but involvement, direct involvement of the British state and the British military in the genocide, in the Gaza Strip, in the Holocaust of our times, is active and involved and still ongoing. UK spy plane flew over Gaza hours after his criticism in Parliament, and this is, when we've had Matt Kennard, the brilliant journalist on in the past, who's done so much to expose the British military's involvement in providing intelligence and helping them to wipe out so many Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
I mean, and this is also, do you want to say anything about the UK trade talks suspension? What significance does that hold? What does that mean, suspending trade talks? I mean, it sounds like it's one of these other kind of maneuvers of like kicking the can down the road. We're going to have meetings to have a conference, to have another meeting about
Yeah,
maybe possibly suspending trade talks
I
as the
exactly.
genocide grinds on.
And it's suspending as well. It's like
Yeah.
the measures that the British government took last year, where they said that they were suspending some arms licenses to Israel, where
Right.
and actually the vast majority of them were still in place, including especially the British involvement in the F-35 program.
Yeah.
And more recent reporting actually has shown that even those licenses they said they were ending are in practice not ending. They're still ongoing. So this is, to use a cliche, but it's still an accurate cliche, perfidious Albion all over again. And the Labour governments especially
Yeah.
are really adept at that. And even like they're trying to say, this is detrimental to the Israeli-British relationship and all of that. Um, even that is not going to help them, because the Israeli response has been fanatical. An
Yeah.
Israeli foreign ministry spokesperson accused Britain of, quote, an anti-Israel obsession, and other Israeli ministers have been saying that, trying to basically say that Keir Starmer is anti-Semitic. So, like, as much as he's done to
Yeah.
drive the left out of the Labour Party and to, fanatically purge Jeremy Corbyn and people like him from the Labour Party on the pretext of this fabricated anti-Semitism crisis, even he is still being accused of
Hmm.
anti-Semitism. So, the it's really it's pretty depressing situation. on the plus side, I mean, I think the more optimistic thing we could say is it's kind of one of these morbid symptoms, I suppose, that Frank was talking about earlier in the stream, where it's kind of shows that there are kind of the rats deserting the sinking ship, as it were, and if we can take some optimism of it out of it, it's that. I would say there was another example of this as well this week with a list of British journalists tweeting out this statement addressed to the Israeli government and to the Egyptian government, calling for journalists to be allowed access to international journalists to be allowed access to the Gaza Strip. Of course, something we would agree with, but I mean, I just found this disgustingly hypocritical because, and especially if you see the names on this list, Robert Preston, who was in this, who posted this out. He's a mainstream news journalist in Britain, who, so 18 months of genocide, probably hundreds of thousands of Palestinians killed or starved to death by now, or dying through deliberately denied medical access. Almost certainly hundreds of thousands of Palestinians, in my view, have been killed in this course of this genocide. 18 months on, and only now are these mainstream British journalists calling for access to the Gaza Strip. I mean,
and these
the
same journalists
hypocrisy.
have not been raising the alarm about the 220 Palestinian journalists who have been assassinated by Israeli forces over the last 18, 19 months.
Yeah.
So, complete disregard for their work, much of which, like including the journalist who was assassinated last week in his hospital bed at Nasser Medical Complex, Hassan Aslaya. Hassan's footage was being used by The Guardian, by the BBC, by the New York Times, by Sky News. None of those journalists, I didn't see a peep raised
I mean,
by them, but they want access to Gaza. Again, the dehumanization of Palestinians, the complete ignoring of the work, the heroic work that these Palestinian journalists are doing every day, putting their lives on the line. But in true European fashion, they're not as valuable as the lives of the white European journalists. So,
100%. Like it's really disgusting. And if we could go back to that last tweet, Tamara, like the names on this list, like the statement, if you read it, is couched in these terms of we're all Jewish journalists and we're calling on. They actually say the Jewish state to open access to us, but you read the names, like some of the names are the most disgusting, rabidly Zionist, anti-Palestinian journalists who, again, are trying to save face because they know. Right. I think that probably some of them know in their heart of hearts what Frank said earlier, that Zionism is going down, that the project of this supremacist state is going down, and they're trying to sort of say, well, I did this. Well, it's too late. Like the blood is on your hands now. This is disgusting. And one of the examples mentioned here in this tweet, Sabrina Miller, who we reported on in the past, who was a fanatically anti-Palestinian activist when she was at university a few years ago. And she's nepotized her way into the mainstream British media, or failed up into the mainstream British media, now working for the rapidly right-wing Daily Mail. She's signed this, and this and we've reported on the past on the academic David Miller, who she had a key role in purging from Bristol University. And this tweet on the screen is from the Dr. 𝐓𝐡𝐞 𝐄𝐥𝐿, who's a lecturer at Birkbeck University of London, and he says in this tweet, Sabrina Miller has been an Israeli propaganda. He's also responding to the Robert Preston statement about access for journalists to Gaza. And 𝐓𝐡𝐞 says, Sabrina Miller has been an Israeli propagandist through and through. She's written several articles about me that led to a flurry of death threats and racist attacks. My class was moved off campus to protect students. It triggered a 6-month investigation by my employer. Donors then threatened to stop funding the university unless I was sacked. I kept my job. She signed this letter. So, it's disgusting. The pure hypocrisy, double standards, and lying is just staggering.
It is. Well, there's always so much to cover, but we're almost at 3 hours. And so um, I just, yeah, there's, I don't know. There's so much to say about everything. Asa, please keep us posted on all of that. Thank
Just
you.
one last comment
Yeah.
on that. I mean, again, it could be optimistic. We try to stay. We try to have that optimism of the will, as well as the pessimism of the intellect, and it's a sign possibly that some of Israel's strongest supporters are beginning to perhaps desert it, or at least back off very slightly. So
Yeah.
the rats could be leaving the sinking ship.
Let's hope Gramsci's always right. Always right.